on?
No.
It's on. Got it.
Is that just to follow up before you dismiss the meeting, the Department of Health sends a report to the town, and it goes to all of Roxbury, and it was created and written for the town of Roxbury. So I do not understand why the whole town of Roxbury should not be sent this report. I'm going to say this as a person who has become quite cynical, and knowing that other people feel the same way. For myself and for others, it's quite obvious that you don't want all of Roxbury to be fully aware of what the ramifications of the SO2 and the H2S problems are, because you want to keep your nice councilship and mayor positions in perpetuity like you think you would. But in the end, you're only harming the town just like you harm the town when you tell people it's okay to buy on the mountain, there's no problems there. Moving on, another point I have is, Mr. Bucco, you told Ms. Cassiotti that you recuse yourself when issues come in the assembly about Fenmore. I don't understand how that is the correct way to go about it. Your father, a state senator, was the one who proposed the legislation that created the act last summer, and he was really upset when he felt like it was being taken away from him. So I don't understand why you, as an assemblyman, cannot go to the assembly and try to help us out, because you can hide behind what the DP is saying, because you can say there's an emergency order, there's an emergency order. The emergency order was written and signed by Bob Martin. Last time I checked, he was not an elected official. The legislature in this state has the right to pass legislation to govern what the DP is doing in this situation. But nobody does anything, and you don't do anything, your father doesn't do anything. So for you to say, I did the right thing by accusing myself, is you're not doing anything.
As I indicated before, anything dealing with the Fenimore landfill in the legislature, I have been advised by our ethics council in the legislature that I cannot participate. As a result of that, I don't participate. She has advised my father that he can participate.
Why can't you
He has
participate?
participate.
I think you would be more value to this town as an assemblyman who fights for us in the legislature than anything you do as a town council attorney. Because you were chosen as an assemblyman by the people. You were chosen as a town attorney by a certain small group of individuals. So I think that you should follow what's right for the people that elected you and not for the small group of people that are doing favors for you. And that's what it looks like. And you can keep going, but...
Let me finish. I've been representing this town since 1998.
But there's issues now. People leave their jobs when they can't perform them anymore.
I can't give up this position, okay, and walk away. I still have the same conflict. It's a conflict.
So you shouldn't have been doing this all along, and you shouldn't keep doing it, because you're not. How many other issues? If there's other issues that come up, you're not going to be able to do that. What if there's another issue? You can't be two things. Just like me, you can't.
All I can tell you is what the law says. I've been advised by our ethics council on children, and her advice was obviously upheld because the question was also asked by a resident. And they came back and said, she's absolutely right, the positions that I took were absolutely correct, and the complaint was dismissed without even a hearing. So, I...
So if you sat down as town attorney and a legislation comes up in the assembly trying to help our town, you would not be able to...
Just like when the...
Is that something that was brought up? Is that something that was brought up by the others?
Just like when the legacy landfill legislation came before the budget committee, which I sat on, I made a statement. I said, because of my position with the township of Roxbury, I have been advised that I cannot vote on this legislation, and I did not vote.
So have you also been advised that if you step down as attorney, that you will not be able to vote, not in your position right now, if you were to step down or leave or be fired, if you would be able to vote? Have you received an ethics? Have you received one? You haven't, so you don't know that.
In my opinion, I still would have knowledge.
In your opinion,
I
but
would
your
still
opinion
have
doesn't hold on.
knowledge of the information associated with the landfill. It's just like if you're an attorney for someone. If you're an attorney and you represent one party, right? And then another party comes and they want you to represent them, right? That had connections with this party while you were representing them. Even if you're no longer representing that first party, you can't represent either party.
I understand that
Okay?
very well.
It's the same thing.
How is it the same thing when you're not acting as an attorney for the legislature, you're an assemblyman? And you have said that you have not received an
You've
opinion
asked
on
the
this.
question, he's answered it. Let's move on.
Of course.
I just want to say, and it's also the opinion of other people here, that, you know, after the DP came, you all expressed disdain, and how could they just come here and stonewall us? Well, you've done the exact same thing. You came in here with an opinion ready to read, and no patience or desire to hear any input from what we had to say. So you stood up a few weeks ago and you said, how could the DP do this? This is terrible. We were doing the exact same thing, and you're just as bad as the DP.
Thank you, Madam.
Michelle Stone for Urban Court. I just want to know why we're not trying again on April 21st.
Right.
Our environmental attorney advised us, based upon the input and the judge's opinion, that there was two reasons. Felt the judge's opinion that day showed that there was no chance of moving forward. Second, by the time we got back to court, the wells would have been dug in. So we wouldn't have had access to them. It would have worked.
Yeah, but that was a key piece of information that you were waiting for to make your decision. That's what you've been telling us for
Yes.
weeks
Yeah, well,
with the expert. So why would you, as a town council, want to fight for that? To see what the samples, what's in the ground? Why won't you fight again?
Because, no,
Give it up.
Samples are gone now.
They're in a pile,
You
actually.
can't get samples? There's no way of getting samples?
They're in a pile.
with the DEP saying no, we can't get samples. That's correct.
Why can't you go to court and try again for the residents of Roxbury? Why wouldn't you do it? I couldn't hear. You were waiting for that piece of information. I remember, Mayor Riley, that was the important piece of information that you were waiting for, the samples.
Yes.
So why don't you want to still fight for that?
We thought not only did we have a great argument in court, but actually was working with Bob Martin and getting him to agree to it. He had agreed to some kind of limited testing until the next day when he called me with the Attorney General sitting next to him and said, "You're not going to be allowed on site to take it." I said, "Thank you, Bob. Now I know what to do." And we went to court.
Right, but why can't you try again to appeal that on the 21st? What does it hurt in trying?
Well, because the samples are already gone.
There's got to be another way to get samples.
That was our access based upon the way it was. People keep talking, you don't answer as well. You know, the landfill had already been disturbed. One of the problems was the capping. Their argument all along, and one thing that hurt us was we couldn't go in and take samples ourselves because we would break into something that is alleviating the odors and causing a problem that would directly affect their emergency order. That's the DEP's opinion. Our opinion was, okay, great, we're not going to disturb the top. You're going to disturb the top. We just want to take the soils that you're disturbing and pull it out. And we thought we had a pretty good argument on that, on all fronts. Unfortunately, the judge didn't see it.
So then, Mr. Bucco, why can't we try to appeal that? You're an attorney, why can't we try?
Once you litigate something in the court, you litigate an issue, you can't go back and litigate the same issue over and over and over again. There has to be a change in circumstances, there has to be something that would allow different facts to allow you to file that type of case. Now, the environmental lawyer who spoke to the council had indicated that it was his opinion, based on his experience and based on the judge's decision, that moving forward on the 21st would be a waste of effort. He said he didn't feel that he would be able to make the case based on the judge's decision and based on the emergency order. The other factor that played into this was the fact that by the 21st, those wells would have been long dug and the material would have been gone. So now he would have had to argue that we would have to bring our own type of equipment on the site. As you heard earlier, the DEP's own equipment in digging these wells tore up that site tremendously. So now we would have had to argue to the judge that we should be allowed to go on the site, tear up the site, and puncture through the landfill again. And unfortunately, their argument is that if you do that, you are going to allow H2S gas to escape. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but I can tell you, if you're sitting up there as a judge and a DEP comes in and presents that type of evidence, you're very reluctant to say, go ahead, town, do it anyway. Judges are reluctant to do that. They're very reluctant to second guess a state agency like that. Unless you've got some sort of, clear and convincing evidence, beyond a reasonable doubt. And we don't have that here. And the environmental attorney even admitted that. So that's fine. Now, I can tell you this, and it hasn't been said before, but the letter, I saw the letter that the attorney wrote to the judge, withdrawing the case. When you withdraw a case, you can either do it with prejudice or without prejudice. If you do it with prejudice, that means you can never bring it again. Okay? In his letter to the judge, he respectfully withdrew the motion without prejudice for the township's right to bring another action should evidence present itself that something was amiss at the landfill, or that other evidence was present to show that, made a difference in the opinion. So we left the door open, and that was the right decision to make on his part. It was absolutely the right decision to make. You don't want to foreclose our ability to go after this again. But at this point, we're really kind of locked in.
So then there's no way of doing it. We can't be pro. I live in Poets Peak. I've been here 17 years. I watched my house get built. I'm raising my 2 boys here. I don't want to go outside and catch my son playing baseball or go for a jog in my neighborhood, knowing that there might be something else in the ground. Our council, I've been coming to these meetings since August. You guys are reactive and not proactive. August, I've been coming to listen to the same story day in and day out. Why can't we try to get samples? Try again, Mayor Riley, try again. You were basing it on a scientific, you were basing it on your decision. You said all along you wanted to see what the core samples were before you all made a decision whether you would agree to trucking it out or capping it. You didn't get the samples, so how can you make that decision? Well, as a resident and a taxpayer of Roxbury Township, where I'm raising my family, I want to know what's in that soil. Every time since August, I'm having this one meeting, and I sit here and listen, and you all say, we'll try, we'll think about that, we'll discuss that. You're never proactive, you're reactive. So I want you to try to get the samples.
Marie Felix, I did bring that up prior, when you said you made your decision that, about the samples, you don't have that. I don't care who you are, you need to do analysis. You need even to x-ray the soil. That wasn't done. But, what bothers me is how much is really a life worth. 2 weeks ago, I was in St. Clair's with a family member. He had 2 blood clots in both lungs. And the doctor said that there's a good chance due to hydrogen sulfides. It could have triggered it. We don't know. He's going for more blood analysis. And so I know, okay, we were getting nosebleeds. Yes, we were. But when that happened, I was like, and I know he was working outside. So I just want to know, how much is a life worth?
Yeah.
I'm not getting it. And I'm exhausted because I came straight from work again, and if I looked at some of you because I saw you not really paying attention,
That's
it
right.
bothered me, because it does.
That's right.
And I'm just getting upset about it because it's just not right. And I know that you care, I know you got screwed too, but you have to understand, they're gonna continue to screw us, because they can. And we have to make a stand.
That's right.
And Paul DePrimo, Succasun. I have a list here from the EPA's website of construction and demolition landfills in New Jersey. Fenimore's not on here. They're in Atlantic, Gloucester, and Monmouth. Why was the decision made, and who made it, to just come into our small little town and put the debris here? You know, the DEP. Why was it allowed? Isn't there a law that the municipality has a say in it?
No. Actually, the Solid Waste Management Act in the state of New Jersey says exactly the opposite. And the
So
reason
the
that it
DEP
said-
can just
and
drop
listen,
anything?
You can argue with this logic or not, but the reason that it says it is because before that law was enacted, no municipality was allowed a landfill to be located. They just did everything they could to shut it down. So the federal government came in and said, this is the deal. The states are going to take full responsibility for this, and at the local level, we have no say. And that's just the way it is.
The EPA has restrictions on where landfills can be and limitations of houses and churches and playgrounds.
They do.
You know, nothing should be within 5 miles of that dam, according to theirs.
It was closed.
They do.
And the DEP decided to just dump it there. And we're not going to take them back to court
They
again.
can't be legally, they operated under a provision in the law that allows them to close landfills and to install solar panels. This was not an initiative of Governor Christie. This was an initiative of the Horizon Administration, actually, that started this. And it carried over into this administration. And essentially what the thought was that in old landfills that had never been capped, normally what happens with an old landfill is once a problem develops in an old landfill, normally what happens is the owner, the federal government and the state government go after the owner of that landfill. And they say, you have to clean it up. And it's millions and millions and millions of dollars. So the owner of that landfill then turns around and sues all of the municipalities that had brought debris into that landfill and all of the companies, garbage companies, that had brought debris into that landfill. They become what they call responsible parties. Those responsible parties then divvy up with the owner of the landfill the cost for remediating the landfill. So let's say there's 30 municipalities, there's 100 garbage companies, and the landowner. Let's say it's going to cost $10 million to clean up the landfill to state standards and federal standards. Those people, those responsible parties, end up in federal court, and they put a judge in charge, and the judge essentially has an expert that shows what it's going to cost to clean up the landfill, and then those responsible parties divide up the cost for closing the landfill. That's how a normal landfill, like the Fenimore landfill, would have been closed. With this new approach, again, it started not in the Christie administration, it started back in the Corzine administration. The idea was to allow private companies to come in and close the landfill properly, but then in order to make up the cost of closing the landfill, they were allowing them to put solar panels on there, and with the energy that was collected through the solar panel, sell it into the grid.
So there was no law recently passed giving the municipalities a little bit more
The legacy-
leverage to give, you know, say, hey, it's our town.
The legacy landfill, as was indicated before, does give the municipalities a little bit more say on legacy landfills, something like Fenimore. But that law was passed after all of this obviously had transpired. So, you know, I can tell you, you can Google online, there's cases where towns tried to stop the closure of landfills by telling the trucking companies they couldn't utilize their local roads. The court said, no, you can't do that. They tried saying it's not zoned for that. Courts rejected it. But now there is a little bit more. And if this landfill would have been closed properly, in the end, when the solar panels, before the solar panels were on, at that point, once the landfill was closed properly, at that point, the town would have had planning board jurisdiction over the solar panels, over the installation of the solar panels, and over landscaping and stuff like that. The town, that would have been the point where the town could come in and have some say, but it wouldn't have had any say until that time.
One more question. Since we're stuck with the scrubber, how often do the filters get changed? How often, like every day?
Question.
Well, there's no filters per se. It's, you guys extracted from two vacuum pumps into the catalytic converter, which is, it's just burning its way. It's a big oven. And then it goes through some piping. And if you look at my report, we put a schematic in there, and there's some dosing of caustic, and that is what gets the stabilization so you don't have the SO2 emissions. And then it drops to a big tall tower with a demister, and that's the final polishing. So there is no filters per se. They have to keep up the reservoir of caustic. That's the important part. If you don't have the caustic, then you're going to have some issues. And they put a butterfly valve recently, about 2 months ago. So if there's some upset, it automatically shuts the butterfly valve, so it stops pumping the gas from the landfill. So if that happens, it's untreated, so it flares out, but the fan stays on. So that what's accomplished? You're pumping, sucking gas.
So there's no
through the system, but
no
no
filters
burning. So
after that.
They fixed that about 2 months ago, and now they're going through that shakedown treatment. So there's no so-called filters like we have in our car or in our furnace in the basement.
Thank you.
Angela Johnson again. I just have a follow-up question about the analysis of trucking it out. I know there were the 2 landfill examples that were given, and you said that you couldn't find any examples where it had successfully been done, and I just wanted to check to see if we contacted like every other state to see, if they've had experience. I mean, I know there's certain experiences in New Jersey, but there's lots of other states that have hurricanes and landfills and C&D material. So I'm just curious. I just want to make sure just from...
I'm not going to say there isn't some example, but I've reached out to my colleagues at other firms, including the 2 people I wrote the paper with about 10 years ago when this is the PCFA. They don't know of any instances because what are we doing with it? We're just taking it to some other neighborhood. And right now, the only place that I know in the area that can even handle waste with the potential to generate high H2S would be Warren County PCFA. And I have talked to them. I talked to them tonight. I've talked to them under the table, and that's the number that I use for this report. And I know some folks, questioning it. Why not some other landfills? Which I would really like to see. I'm glad to see the enthusiasm. But also, they have to have the landfill has to be set up with a treatment system, which would be $1 million. The PCFA was $4.5 million. So there's limitations. It has to have the right conditions. And certainly, globally, you wouldn't want to just take the problem from one landfill and take it to a neighborhood of someone else.
Right. I mean, but the
I mean,
thing is that
that's just, a general sense for how we live our lives. In this sense, yes, I have talked, and actually there was a conference the past 2 days that I could not go to because of being here tonight, that it's called SWAN, and it's all people like me that have workshops with papers. There's Atlantic City Sunday today, I missed it because I'm here, to support the council.
No, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I mean, I think what we're talking about is taking it to an operational landfill, not someplace like this that wasn't set up to deal with this sorts of
And,
material.
and I agree, again, the only place I know from the city that would be reasonable to truck it to would be the PCFA of Warren County, and they are the numbers, and that's the data that I use. I've been to the site many times, and I've interviewed the executive director, and again, I talked to him today, and it's 27 miles away. It's an operational, 360-acre facility that they're putting landfill expansion probably around for another 100 years.
And
They went through the whole process, Mrs. Johnson, from the burn that we have here on Fenimore to the decrease in the H2S from the original starting point of 16,000 parts per million down to probably about 500 now, and they put the iron sponge on about 2 years ago.
But that's an operating landfill,
It's
correct?
an operating landfill.
So they have somebody, a funding source to fund all of this stuff that you're talking
It's
about.
actually
I mean, I
his
think what I'm worried about is who's going to pay for it, like, especially if the courts give the site back to SEP. Like, what's going to happen?
Well, that's a
So,
good question, that's a great question, and I trust me that those business decisions with the council and the mayor are working on to make sure that they have secure funding source, a dedicated funding source for this. That's what they are working on.
okay. And just, lastly, I would just leave, just because something hasn't been done before doesn't mean that it can't be done. So just, just want to throw that out there.
I am Ken Collins, and a couple more questions came up during the course of the conversation that I wanted to ask you. First of all, has anyone done due diligence and contacted any number of different facilities that might be able to handle this material and ask them questions? Have you contacted anybody but the Warren landfill and talked to, any of the other facilities that could accept this material and ask them what they might want for it? Tipping fees for hauling this stuff out to another place? Have you talked to any other landfills besides Warren about what they might want for
I think
tipping
I
fees?
just went through this with Mrs. Johnson, is that it would have to be a landfill to handle the high H2S and the material. The material is, it's now wet and it's decomposed and it's laden with bacteria, so it would have to go through and handle it and have permits in hand. And are you aware of anyone besides PCFA that has millions of dollars invested in the hydrogen sulfide scrubbing system?
I'm aware of the Penargil facility in Pennsylvania that Mr. Morocco spoke to, and that the people who ran it gave him a cost of $48 per ton, not 90-something. They said they'd be very happy to accept your waste, and they recommended that you put it out to bid, and you'd probably get an even cheaper price.
I wouldn't put it out to bid. I'm not in a position to put it out to bid.
Well, I know you're not at JDEP, who's forcing the plan down everyone's throat, but,
I'm not aware that they can handle the waste because of the lack of the H2S treatment system. Have you been to the site?
Which site?
Penargil.
I have not.
Did you try to drive there today?
No, I did not.
Well, I did. You know what happened? There was a car wreck on 80 going both ways. And we did a computer model today, and through the lifetime, if you did take the Penargil, there would be 2.5 car accidents on Route 80 from the trucks coming from
That's
here.
very speculative information, sir. That's fear-mongering speculative information. All right, so I appreciate that, but that's not very scientific. And, they will accept the waste. Mr. Morocco spoke to them, but I understand you have no control over that, and JDEP has control over what's going on.
Actually, the DEP, the people talking speculation, the process to accept the waste, there has to be samples taken, it has to meet with their permit, and they have to have the proper treatment. You're going in a circle. The material has H2S, and it has to go to a place that can handle it through the permit. Okay, you're shaking that, okay.
I understand you, sir. I'm shaking my head in affirmation. You don't have to berate me in front of the town. That would be very nice. Option 2, total excavation. I heard it said, and the last person brought this subject up, and the mayor said that that it's dangerous, that there would be a release of gas if we trucked it out, and that's a danger. And he said that, and we discussed this just now, that it can't be, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, let me put it a different way. I saw the map that was sent around to the other towns by DEP through the email. It shows where they would be dangerously exposed to high levels of gas, where the danger exists in this. I could bring it up for you if you like and show you, but I'm sure you're familiar with the map I'm talking about. However, looking right here, in your study, total excavation option 2, 6.2.3, it says that recommended is 2 tented containment structures with filtration systems at an additional cost of $250,000 each. So it would be $500,000 for 2 containment tents and filtration systems to keep this gas from doing exactly what they're going around fear-mongering and saying it would do. So which is it? We can put a tent in and spend $500,000 and collect the gas while we truck it out? So you keep saying that there's no landfill. This is the point I was reaching for earlier, that there's no landfill that you can point at where this has been done before. But if you don't have the balls to do it here, then you're not going to ever set that precedent.
You mean by walls experimenting on our residents, you're right.
We
You're
hired
never
him.
going to get elected. Never.
We hired him, he's our expert.
I ignored what he said.
Hi, Kathy Panetta, 14 Raritan Avenue in Ledgewood. I don't know most of all of this technical stuff that's been talked about. I'll leave it to them and to you to discern what's going on. I just know I get sick once it hits 11 parts per billion, and I can look at that monitor and tell you that that's where it's at. As a special ed teacher, I've had many playground fights, many hall fights to break up over the years. And you have to make a quick decision even as a parent when your kids are fighting as to what's going on and discern the truth and see who needs to go to the principal office for timeout and who's really telling the truth here. So I was at that court, and I know from Judge Wilson and from some of my own experiences, some of these judges are really wacky, and you can present some pretty good information and they still make rulings that just make no logical sense. And I know that Mr. Bucco was advising Mr. Jaffe, who was our expert, who was advising Mr. Grouser, right? I got it right so far? Who was our environmental attorney specialist, right, at
No,
court?
that's not true. Mr. Zelli, in his certification, did it completely with Mr. Grouser. I wasn't involved at all, right, in certification.
Okay.
Or formulating his argument.
All right, I was just confused because I know at council meetings, I don't mean to put you in the court, Mr. Bucco. I just know at council meetings, when we ask questions about the experts, you're the one talking to the experts. So I'll say forget that part of it.
Well, what I did was once the council hired environmental attorneys, I gave them the name and number of our environmental expert.
Okay, okay. So Mr. Grouser was hired on your recommendations?
No,
No.
had nothing to do with hiring Mr. Grouser.
Mr. Hall found Mr. Grouser.
Oh, okay, okay. I don't know law, but I know sitting there, Mr. Burns, you were kind enough to come. You could probably say the same thing. The judge just seemed intent on following the law that we get the odor mediated quickly, right? I mean, we just had to get, that was the intent, was to get these wells dug, to get the odor taken care of quickly, and to let nobody get in the way of that. That's the gist of his. Am I correct in that, assuming that was where the judge was coming from?
I'm sorry,
Was that the gist of where the judge was coming from? That it seemed that the order was just to see that those wells were dug to mitigate the odor for us residents, because it was so dangerous, you know, having that odor like last summer, to get those wells dug as soon as possible. That was his main focus, right, in court? Okay. The DEP made it sound like we would really be in the way. Our two environmental consultants that would help scoop the dirt out of the plops, as the judge called it, and measure where they came from, would be in the way. Because the DEP people would be in hazmat suits and have portable oxygen, and our environmental experts would need the same. And the judge even talked about, well, the time it would take for them to switch out their oxygen tanks. Mr. Jaffe, were you on the, you said you had people on the site, correct? Watching the wells being done. Did somebody was up there watching?
We were there on site. We had self-contained breathing apparatus. As a matter of fact, I think we're the only ones that actually did it. And what was your question?
Well, the DEP made it sound like they had to have all of that apparatus. And our attorney, Mr. Grouser, was saying, well, I've actually been up there in jeans or in a suit and jacket and I've done this a lot of times and never needed all that apparatus, but I'll go along with whatever the DEP says we have to have and what their protocol is. Yet it seems that the DEP didn't even have all of this.
There's a big difference between walking the landfill with a posi shell and putting a 24-inch diameter auger down through 35 feet of material that's 25% hydrogen sulfide. And through my career, I worked on hundreds and hundreds of sites throughout the country and overseas, and people die when mistakes are made. The DEP is being conservative, and I agree. And Bruce Groves and I worked on this, and we agreed with their approach to being conservative. We didn't want them to die. There was equipment on site. If levels got high, there would have been a shutdown, and there would have been a conversion to supply air. My guy, David Keel, was also a fireman, lieutenant. He had his right with him, right by. He was the one person. That's not typical, but he's very prepared. Bruce had his senior technician out there, continuous monitoring with my person. The approach in the field was correct by the DEP and Emmecon and Mazer. Luckily, the levels that we encountered were not the levels that could have been worst case. We had very significant prevailing winds away from the work area. We were prepared. We had recommended on behalf of the town for a vacuum-induced system to be applied at the borehole. That will basically you create a vacuum so you control the engineering environment around the hole. They didn't have to employ it because there was a steady sailor's breeze. They got it done, all the work done in what, 3 days without any incident. That's important to us because we go on the next site, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Next thing I'm on a site that has some other chemical, another chemical, and compared to someone who goes up on the suit, been on one site for 5 years, or Bruce and I are on these sites every day in our career. The approach was right. The work was done. It was done very efficiently, and yes, we had people there the entire time Bruce and I both.
None of that was presented to the judge. It was just they would be there in hazmat
The work
suits.
didn't happen yet.
And pardon me?
I'm sorry, but I was at the hearing also, and the work did not happen. They didn't start the work until about, 20 minutes after the judge made his determination.
Right, because somebody said that the wells are being dug, today. But the judge seemed to think that we would be in the way because we would need all this extra equipment.
No, that's not what happened. He was concerned, and the boom swing was about 8 to 10 feet. And they have a 24-inch, look at my report, I have a picture, I believe there's a picture in there of a bucket auger. And it goes in, and it twists, and it comes up, and it moves over, and it spins, and it's really quick. We were going to take a composite sample.
Right.
And their opportunity, and listen, I agree with Tony, is the judge wasn't getting it, and I don't know if there's anything we can do.
Well, Mr. Grouser didn't
Let me
disagree with
finish.
him.
To have taken a sample with a swing motion, we would have taken the guy's head off. The only opportunity would have been when they moved the rig to the next hole. And if you look, if you read my report, there's a table in one of the appendices that has a chronology of all the wells that were put in within 3 days. And the pile stood there, laid there for about 30 minutes before they had some kind of front end loader or put it into some kind of a dump truck and deposit it down until the slope, which is also a picture in the report. That's when I inspected it. I walked right up to it, and there was no loaders, and I took pictures of it. But, you know, the DEP, they were describing to the judge what was going to happen. I've actually done this work.
A worst case
The
scenario.
two people from the DEP, they're attorneys, they've never done this in their life. So they're trying to do the best to represent what they were told by someone in the DEP.
Yeah, so why didn't Mr. Grouser, why wasn't he better prepared to change the judge's mind? And also there was a whole problem with Birdsall and there being a conflict of interest. Remember, I saw you guys talking about all the conflict of interest. He didn't even bring that up. So I thought for sure you'd go back to 21st and say, we got him. We got pictures of the DEP workers up there without even a dust mask on. This whole Birdsall thing needs to be revisited. I'm really surprised, since you all said you really wanted those core samples, which we're all on the same page on that. Why are you really not going forward with it? It's in the bottom of all of our hearts for all of what we really need to feel comfortable with this decision, I think. I'm just not clear on why you're not pursuing that.
Well, I think we believe, based upon the advice we've been given by our environmental attorney, that what the judge stated, and how he stated it, he gave clear direction into the executive order and the DEP.
That we weren't to get in the way of getting those wells in. We wouldn't be getting in the way now of getting those wells in the
We
ring.
wouldn't have gotten in their way. You know, realistically, what we agree, we can agree. But that's the DEP was convincing the judge differently, and the judge was leaning towards the DEP.
So there's no way we can.
The 21st is not here yet, and the wells are already done, so we can't get back. The work's done. We have no ability to get those samples.
Since we got the wells in and we won't be in the way, I just don't understand why we still can't go after those samples since the goal of the DEP has been accomplished.
You want to go get it? Go dig new holes.
Right.
Yeah.
There was no giant numbers leaping off the monitors when they were digging those holes. That's not going to be a problem for us.
That goes back to what I stated before. The DEP initially stopped us because in the executive order, they didn't need a judge. It says we cannot do anything that would harm the release of any gas because the executive order was there. So their argument initially was you can't go up there and just take core samples because you'll have to go through our policy shop, which means you're now affecting our cap. Right?
But
So we couldn't get through that. When they said they were going to put in additional monitoring wells, we said, okay, we're not going to break the cap. You are. We want the dirt. And here's the executive order that says we can have the dirt, which is what the effort we made. Again, we tried to work with the DEP on that initially, hoping to work with them, not against them.
So don't we have to prove now that we even though we opened up the wells and the posi shell went down 20 feet to 21 places and there was no H2S emergency all over town, it's really not a big deal to want to get those samples. So all of us feel really comfortable with all we've talked about.
Yeah, but again, the DEP is not permitting us to go in there and open up the shell.
But isn't that what the judge is
That's-
supposed to
no,
tell them to do?
The judge prevented us from getting the samples from them breaking through the shell, not us. It's a very distinct difference.
It just seems like we didn't try hard enough. We didn't have an attorney that was well versed enough to really fight for what we needed. for this report so that we would all really feel comfortable with it.
Well, you know, when you lose, you always feel like you did something wrong. We thought we were in a very good case. Mr. Zeller worked with him with this particular case and felt very strongly about the case and how Mr. Grauber handled it. So, you know, when you lose, you always think you missed something, but I don't think we went in unprepared.
Okay, it didn't look like that from where we were sitting. He looked like a big marshmallow, just letting them roll over him. I mean, there were no hazmat suits, there was no portable oxygen, it was all a big bluff. All right, thank you.